Behind me is the Western Shop, the most famous tack shop in South Africa, and it has been the title sponsor for JADE HOOKE for the past 2 years. She now resides in the United Kingdom to try and ply her trade on the international front. It's been a very expensive exercise, moving her horse from South Africa to the United Kingdom, a cost way in excess of 250,000 Rand. And we're going to go inside now and find out exactly what gave rise to this monumental decision to move from South Africa to the UK, hopefully to burst onto the international scene as she has done here in South Africa. The youngest winner ever to win the Avis Derby. She's won a whole host of titles, but we'll find out inside just exactly how talented JADE HOOKE really is. Come and join us. Jade, obviously an enormous leap of faith to leave the comfort of the home where you're a big fish in a small pond here in Port Elizabeth. You've won the Avis Derby twice, you've won several other titles. Tell us about how you actually came to the point where you're ready to embark on this monumental leap of faith.
It's been what I've wanted to do for a long time in my life, at least for the last 4 years. And now that my horse is 15 years old, I think it's time for me to go. And also I'm a bit older, so I feel like I'm ready to take that next step in my life. Luckily, I managed to get an ancestral visa through my dad, and then I phoned Ronnie Healy, and he accepted me to come and ride in his yard. So all the plans started working together, and I sent my horse, and I'm sure the plane trip will take a lot out of him. So when he gets there, we'll just have to probably start back to the basics and see where we go from there.
In order to embark on such an audacious venture, you must have a deep understanding of the horse, and you must have had enormous infrastructural support. So tell us where it all started for JADE HOOKE. Was it a family thing? Was it something that you began from a very early age?
My riding career started in St. Francis Bay when I was 6 years old. We rode in a local riding school there. Then my parents moved to PE, so I went along and started riding with Diane Snodgrass, who's been my trainer since then, and started competitively jumping at around 11 or 12 years old. Then was quite successful in my pony years and went on to juniors and adults, where I got a new era, who was quite underrated, but we managed to get a great partnership going and win 2 derbies, which I'm really honored to have done at my age. So it's been a great experience, and now we're heading into the really big world.
As far as New Era was concerned, there were many antagonists. There were many people that didn't think that he was good enough to take you to the top, but he proved them all wrong, didn't he?
My mind was set the first time I rode him, and I loved him. I still went to Mauritius and on holiday, and I came back and he was still there for sale, and I begged my mom. I even started crying when she said, no, I can't have him. So he passed the vetting 100%, and yeah, then I managed to convince her to buy him for me, and luckily the partnership really worked.
And there's a degree of fitness required for a track this long to ride a horse this big and strong. Good stride to the water, still clear. Now, 3 more efforts. She gets a good distance to that. Remarkable. Without a time penalty to add, the first clear round of the competition, JADE HOOKE.
When you entered the Avis Derby, you'd never ever jumped that height before, and you'd never ever jumped on such a daunting course or competed against people who may well have been your idols when you were young. So I'm sure it's going to be something that you'll treasure for the rest of your life, to understate the point.
Yeah, I don't think I'll ever forget the feeling I felt when I did win my first derby. It was amazing, and also amazing to have my mum there. And to do it on New Era, who was so underrated, was a real honor. And being the youngest ever was also a real privilege.
The following year you came back to the Derby, and in many ways probably even more daunting, because you were now the defending champion, and although you'd actually won the Derby the year before, a lot had happened in your life.
Yes, there was definitely a lot of pressure, which I'm normally quite good under, but I really battled that year, and luckily the following year I came back and managed to win again.
I guess in many ways more so emotionally than anything else. The third Derby must have been the most daunting for you, but some people say that one gets enormous inspiration from adversity.
Yeah, that was definitely the driving force behind the reason that I wanted to win. So I had a great motive to win, which really helped me, and I did it for my mum, so it was a great experience.
Your 2 victories in the Avis Derby will always be at the top of the pile, but there are many other events that you have been victorious in order to get you to a position where you are worthy of competing on the world stage.
Well, I think Derby is definitely the most prestigious event to win in South Africa. After that, I think to win the World Cup Series, which I won in 2011, I won 2 legs, which was in Polokwane and Port Elizabeth, which made me the overall winner, but unfortunately I couldn't go to the World Cup final overseas as I couldn't get my horse there and didn't have the funding. And then SA Champs is still something I haven't won in South Africa, so I'll definitely be back to try and win that one year.
The layman would think that sponsors would be queuing up to support you in your endeavour, but I think big sponsors really support teams to a large extent, and this is where I think the Western Shop have been so loyal and so supportive in making sure that you have been able to be supplied with the necessities to keep you going, and of course hopefully will continue to do so on the international front.
Yes, I'm very privileged to be sponsored by Western Shop. Not many people are, so I'm very lucky. I think corporate companies battle to sponsor individual these days, so they head towards sponsoring teams, but when they get to know the individual, then maybe I'll have a better chance.
What about the other Jade Hook, the triathlete, the advantage that you've always had in terms of being able to keep yourself really fit and strong, which perhaps a lot of other competitors don't have?
I love triathlon, and I think it's going to be very difficult in the freezing cold to exercise, and I'm very sporty and competitive. Obviously, I don't really know the show calendar in London yet, but my next goal would be to do Hamburg Derby, and Hickstead Derby is a huge goal. And if I can qualify for World Equestrian Games next year, August, that would be a bonus. And obviously, Olympics 2016 would be a dream. And if I've got the horses and the financial support, I'll definitely try to do that.
Not for 1 minute insinuating that you've had an easy and cushy life back in Port Elizabeth. It's going to be very, very different from having your own infrastructural support. You may actually end up being a groom. Have you ever thought about that?
Well, normally I wake up at 5 and go cycling, so it will be very different, but I don't mind starting at the bottom if it's going to mean that I'll get to the top. And I'm a blonde, but I can clean a stable.
Coming from the thoroughbred world, we are all too well aware of the exorbitant cost of getting a horse into quarantine and getting the horse halfway around the world in a completely different mechanism that is prevalent as far as the Australians and New Zealanders, Hong Kong, Singapore. It's very difficult for South African horses to travel. It must have been enormously expensive for you.
It's very expensive. That's why I can only take 1 horse, and I'm having to leave 4 horses behind. So it costs 250,000 Rand just to fly the horse over to London. And then the expenses there is also going to be quite a knock. It's going to cost me at least 30,000 Rand to keep 1 horse there a month. And obviously my expenses, but I'm hoping to get sponsors or maybe work in the yard to subsidize my stabling.
Is JADE